So, thank you very much, Dennis, for this introduction to your work.
Thank you.
We can go a little bit deeper. Now we have half an hour of a debate. I think we start first that we stay here on stage. May I introduce now Sylvia Karras from Karras & Brands from Hilversum, landscape architect firm working internationally from Australia to Norway and everything in between. Am I right? Yes. And she also has been working in, you have seen on the list, with this My Street program. So I think we will have a short talk about how it is working together with Strelka and what we can learn from Strelka, which is my interest. And then if you have questions to those guys, especially to Strelka, then you just give a sign and you can intermingle instantly. But you want to sit or stand? I don't know. Maybe sit down first. Please, take a seat.
If you need to test it,
yeah, we have to see how it is to sit on Vestre. Maybe we start with Sylvia. Sylvia, you have been working with Strelka in this My Street program. Maybe you can tell me what is different from other conditions where you're working in, working together with Strelka. Is there something which is significantly different from other administrations or authorities or groups you're working with? And what is it like? Just maybe your experiences.
Well, how long do you have? For the first, I'm very proud that Strelka is here and Strelka is visible for all of us, because I think many people don't know Strelka, and I'm really proud that you are one of the winners, because I think what you're doing is so special, and so in such a short time you have been able to stimulate the transformation of public space in Moscow and in many other countries. And I think that's never done before in such a short time and in such a special way. What I think is so special that you combine knowledge from other offices from all over the world and make it happen that they can work in Russia and that they share their knowledge with you in Moscow, where there is a very, how can I say, it's not a very well developed profession, designing public space and create public space. And to work with you is very special. And I think if you really want to know, you have to ask Darius, who is here on the opposite, because Darius Resnik is doing our Russian project most of the time. And it's crazy. It's very special, but it's also crazy. Sometimes you get crazy questions. So I think we started with this the 7 guidebooks for all the green spaces in Moscow. Now, if you ask a Dutch landscape architect to give solutions for all the green spaces in Moscow, it's because we are used to work so site-specific, and this was not site-specific. So it was a crazy question, and we discussed that in the office. But we thought it's also such an exciting opportunity to be part of this transformation, and I think we learned to work with you after some years. We did quite a few projects together on different scales, and yeah, it is. I think we should ask Darius more about that. But come and sit here.
Maybe this is Darius. He's a partner in Karras & Brands since freshly, since half a year. Okay, yeah. So he's authorized to speak for Karras & Brands.
But I have to say, they all had to prepare yesterday, and I wasn't part of the preparation. So
but you can do it.
I can do it.
Yeah. By heart.
Yeah.
Just tell us.
Well, I thought. I mean, I'm coming from Romania, so I'm not Dutch originally, and I'm kind of maybe the stepping stone between the Netherlands and the pit stop between the Netherlands and Russia. And for me, it was always an interesting challenge, but also interesting because you get to affect change by doing something different than a beautifully designed project, and maybe by these books that provide kind of this almost a Neufert of public spaces that gather so much knowledge from everybody into kind of one volume. You get to affect much more change than by doing one solitary beautiful public space. And that's, for me, that's also what was very special all the time working with Strelka, and all the different kinds of challenges that you run into. I mean, we also get to be sometimes a little bit spoiled if kind of everything is going perfect and everything is going in the West, you know, like detailing is, you almost don't have to think about it because there's amazing engineers, there's very experienced constructors, builders. It's like the weight is off your shoulders. But when you really have to kind of think about everything, it's a very different challenge. So that's very interesting. And Strelka makes that, I think, this bridge. And they have to deal with all that, which is incredible, I think, and very, very challenging. Yeah.
I have to insist in coming back to the one question. I mean, design is not just make a design, a drawing, and then build it. It's a process. And for example, in Moscow, as far as I know, you correct me, there was Arpad Street, the first pedestrian street for decades. And then Strelka came, and things went better and out of the blue. How comes? I mean, this is very abstract, but what is necessary to get the position you have now, to get into society and in the politics and to achieve things? How you came into the position? It was very obvious.
No, it's difficult to answer. Of course, you need luck, yeah, and I mean, but when you get this luck, you should take this opportunity in the maximum, yeah. So I don't have the pre-ready receipt of how it happens. What I do know is that we are anyway. So when we start, when this institution was started, and I was the first year student with the REM Kolkhoz course like 10 years ago. And when the Strelka started, I do know that all the people who were then doing this project, and it's non-governmental one, anyway, they're interested within the cities, they were passionate about what they are doing, and they do, and they know that we will do it anyway. Will we have this My Street program or not? It doesn't matter, yeah? So we just do the thing which we think is important for our cities. And we were just searching for chances. Yeah, and it's not means that we have only victories. Of course, we have fails. Of course, there are some things which fails and people just don't want to listen, or all the things happens. I mean, I don't know how it's worked, but I don't know. I showing 100 presentation, then maybe one project realized from this, and it's you all the time. But you don't have to stop. Yeah, so that's only the way. I think if you are passionate by what you are doing, if you're communicating with the people, if you're open for the discussion, if you're showing them the results which they can get, that's the way how it goes. And then I think within us, it's not about this Arpad Street, but when Strelka started, we were asked to advise on the Gorky Park. Is kind of the central park of Moscow, and within that it became really popular place. Then we were asked to make a brief for Zaryadye Park, and also it was a big, let's say, difficult dialogue. I don't like this words fights, because anyway we stay in the dialogue, but what we create is the opportunity to not to build a shopping center inside this park, and I think it was a great opportunity to explain to the city that public spaces regenerate the city economy and city fabric around the public spaces, but you should not commercialize them too much. It was the first time they go with this advice. So then it was also the question what it will be the name of this park, and but then it succeeded, yeah. And so the next step was this My Street project, when we did few projects and explain systematically how it can be realized and how you can link the effects for the whole city in terms of ecology, economy, safety, and exact object, yeah, or exact street. So if you're doing something on a very, let's say, local scale, but then there is a repetition of things which you are doing, then you have the effect on the city scale. Yeah, and that's how it works, these guidelines and the actual designs done by the architects. And then within when you compare the guidelines which we work together with you on the park and the Neufeld, we have a bit, I think, different approach from the Neufeld because we don't offer exact solutions. So for us, it's more important to get values into the process of these guidelines. And site-specific, no, they are Moscow-specific, yeah, so there are global guidelines for the streets, and we think that they should be designed specifically for the cities, yeah. But then, of course, there is a lot of work should be done also on the specific sites, which is like the next level. I don't know, have I answered your question?
Yeah, sure, but there come more. You started in Moscow, and was it maybe the main issue to start in Moscow, being very close to the politicians and in the capital, and to show and to meet the openness there in the city that they needed that there was the need for change, and you could help them as a catalyst and to bring things into the debate. And now you work in 50 other cities or even more. Is this, if it's good in Moscow, it's good in Novosibirsk, or are they also open now? I don't know who makes the decision in these cities and asking you to come, or does it go different ways through the party or somewhere else? I don't know.
No, first, when I talk about this openness of the system, I talk about us. Yeah, so we are open mainly, and we are ready for communicate, and we are ready to communicate in all levels. Yeah, so I think it's very important for the say professionals not to divide job. This is your job as a politician, and this is my job as a professional. I mean, if we work within the city, it's our job, the city. Yeah. So in this case, I mean, I do not specifically maybe in our environment, but this specialization, yeah, it kills the process. So and then. Yes, you should take a risk and, I don't know, and go to public and talk with them, and then maybe then you act as a politician for a while, yeah, but in the right sense. I mean, it not mean that you go with the campaign, yeah, or you take a risk and work together with the workers which are not able to read documentation. I mean, they cannot read it at all, yeah, so they don't know even how to. Which size this should be. So for them, for example, we create kind of the IKEA guidelines how you can create the street. So it was just the drawings, and then we create the small examples together with them, and then they start repeating it. But if I'll be professional, say, okay, this is my drawings and your drawings, and I don't care, change these workers. Yeah, but I mean, it's not possible. And so all these things, this specialization kills. So that's why I think with this, we are so, let's say, also at professional level, very diverse, I mean, within the Strelka. And all the time when I hear from my people that no, I'm an economist, I will not do this. Well, it's not my solution. I mean, no. I mean, it's not my part of the job. It's your part of the job. Go there, discuss with the people, even if it's difficult for you. But this you should understand how it works as a homogeneous system, and you should work with it as a whole, not as try to split it in a parts. So when we work together with other cities, there are few levels of this communication. So on one level, we have a support from it's a housing, let's say housing lease agency on the federal level, who are our clients within the cities. Then and our role is to go to the city, find the specialists or young emerging teams, if they are there, with whom we want to collaborate. We do kind of these small competitions for them, and to understand what are the, let's say, forces on the field. Then we select together with the public, with the city, with the municipality, or with the specialists in the city, the specific sites. And then, no, it's also a tricky thing, because municipality always wants to make, for them, main square is in front of the city administration building. and for the people which is not. So it's also a kind of question how to select the spaces in the city. Then we go to this process of engagement and prepare the briefs and design proposal together with the local architects. Then we gave all this documentation, let's say, to the municipality, and they go through the official procedures of tenders, which they have to create for construction and for the project documentation. And we supervise then the process. So, but I mean, now, if I'm it's like traveling once, or my colleagues also, Dasha Paramonov, she's Strelka architect director, and she's really very into this 40 cities project. So I think they travel 2-3 times a week for all cities of Russia. So it's very different in management level, in understanding level of what is the public space, why it's needed at all, yeah, and why. Because I mean, a lot of questions like why you do public spaces but not do schools, for example, yeah, and so on. So it's better give us this money and don't spend it on the city and so on. So it's very different, but this is also you have to find the right formula to each specific site or specific place, how you can bring or came to the results, yeah, and sometimes very top down. Some cities, they have very bottom-up system, and for me it was very surprising. Some of them have this mix, like Novosibirsk, we came through the very difficult debates, and also were the political debates around the project, but finally it goes to the realization. For me it was very surprising. It was really tough discussion, but it brings project to the final. So it was not stopping the project, but shaping it. So, and in each case it's very different.
You mentioned bottom-up. Maybe we can talk a little bit about participation, because this is not necessarily what we expect in Russia, that people can talk about the development, or correct me, I have no idea. I've very seldom been in Russia. So how does it work to bring the people into it, the citizens, to participate in these programs? I think most of these achievements, they are directly commissioned to architects and planners and landscape architects, not many competitions like we have, for example, in Germany, and in which or when does the participation start, if you do have such processes?
So if we talk about in general, there is an official process of consultation, but it's very bureaucratic, let's say so, and it's formalistic in 99.5%. But that's actually, for us, it's also the challenge as the competition. So we start as a competition office and start making the open competitions or international competitions in Moscow, in Russia, in a new way. And now we have, I think we run mostly 40 of them on a very different scale. And this was for us the tool to absorb or to invite emerging offices who are not have no chances to get into these commissions for the municipalities, but we bring them into on the table, or to bring international architects to the stage, and hopefully 70% of 12 competitions which we done, they was realized, yeah. So and then same with the engagement, because they do have official competitions, but they are formalistic, so they don't give value into the project. Yes, there is a consultation process, but it's formalistic, it's not bring value to the project. So you just start alternative ways of these consultations, and we have the department which is working with this stage. So yes, you talk with the people, sometimes they, no, it's strange for the professional to answer these questions, but you should. And yes, you have to listen to them. And then also what we found is that as a beginning, we came to these public consultations with, let's say, with the designs of the images. And what we found, the more specific your design is, the more negative result you get from this type of the consultations. So you should go on a very, very early stage. And this kind of, I think for us, it's a formula now, that you don't go with the images. If you want involvement, the project should not be specified. Yeah, so it should not be clear. Yeah, so if you want to be people the part of the solution, don't bring them solution. They will never be the part of your solution. What they want you somehow to form the solution which they think about. It doesn't mean that it will look like what they draw, or they should exactly do what they're telling you, but just to understand the conditions in which people work, it's really important. And it's very different from the politicians, because politicians need only an image. Yeah. So when you talk with these municipalities, they don't understand project until there is no image, and you say, okay, it will look like that. Yeah. So if you want to work with, let's say, municipality and involve them into the process, you need an image of the dream. If you want to involve citizens to the project, you don't need an image at all. You should just have to go to them and talk and try to get understand their needs.
I think it's time to ask you in the audience. I'm sure there are hundreds of questions to Denis, or maybe even to the firm Caras and Brands. So please, hands up. Who wants to ask something? Don't be shy. You don't have to come on stage if you don't want to. We can bring the mic to you. Yes, please. And maybe you introduce yourself, name and position.
I don't have a position, but I'm a landscape architect. I'm Hans Dekker. I'm from the Netherlands. So I didn't know you. I didn't hear from you before. And it doesn't say anything about you, but maybe all about me. I don't know. Anyway, I'm very, how you call that, impressed. And I have two questions. One question is, there's now a big debate on climate change. In Holland especially, it's a big discussion about that. And of course, also, how do we implement that? And so my first question is there attention from the municipalities in Russia, especially for climate change? And do they, let's say, does it help you to develop urban space?
And second,
the second one is, how do you, that's more like a challenge, but maybe that's more like a discussion. I see that you have so much power, potentially, anyway. Also about scales, that you can meet so many people, you could interact with so many people. So I was wondering if it's also not an opportunity also for our profession to go more into the governance and to go more into the processes with people. Because the real problems are, let's say, also with people. And in their, let's say, social, financial, economic, health situations. So I was wondering if you could see this also as a realm for your organization to go into, to participate, to intervene.
So, okay. So first, I should coin the thing you said, that we should have so much power. We don't have power at all. What we have, I think, a passion, about the city. That's all.
Power, yeah.
I mean, but specifically with the, so I should be mention that. And second thing is, so I mean, about the global warming or climate change. I mean, very short answer will be no. Yeah, but then what we see, or how we understand, I mean, it's from the society to society, there is different way of understanding the things, and what we see is just the awareness about the ecology in general. And so I think that this is the next step of, let's say, of the comfort which people need or want or ask from the city after they get the physical comfort. So what we get, let's say in Moscow, we see that this improvement of the public spaces, improvement of the transport system, and so on, which is actually quite modern and quite advanced. I mean, comparing even to the other big cities, not of Russia, but at least of the Europe. And what we see that there is a raising of this question of the ecological comfort. So which air do we breathe, what we use, and so on, so on. So I think this is the next step. Yeah, maybe the third step will be to be in this global agenda and to understand how the city influence on these climate change issues. But now it's not a big part of the things which we do. Or which cities, I mean, part of the discussion. Meanwhile, they see the effects of it, yeah, of this global warming, or, for example, the intensity. I think it's all over Europe. The intensity of the rains, not the amount of the rains, but intensity of the water you get from the rain in like 1 hour. Yeah, and what we see in Moscow, for example, the whole system was designed for 220 millimeters per hour to absorb, or 22, I think, yeah, 22 millimeters to absorb. And there are already rains more than 22, I mean, in 1 hour. Yeah, so they showed, and then there's a question, and then 30% will be like in the next 30 years, there will be like more rain. Yeah, so what you can do with that, because can you change the whole infrastructure within the city? No. Yeah, so you should find the new techniques or new ways, including the guidelines, how you can cut the water from going to the streets, take it, absorb it from the roofs, or make more gardens, so on and so on. So in this case, yes, yeah, this is part of the debate, but it's not part of the, let's say, global agenda, but it's part of the risks which city challenges, and we have to find the right answers for these challenges. Yeah.
When actually when we were working on these guidelines, in the beginning we had all the discussions of let's put kind of water on the center stage, and the politicians or they were quite skeptical. So they were always like, Moscow doesn't have a water problem. Moscow doesn't have a water problem. And then I think it was the third workshop that we had, and there was a huge storm, and people were surfing on the streets in Moscow. And then they kind of said, okay, maybe we. So in the end, a lot of kind of these very basic water kind of management solutions made it to the kind of toolbox of inspiration, and that was a very good kind of thing. Yeah.
So there is it's a process. Yeah, you. When you get the so first, I mean, and then the second question which you raise, it's about this, let's say, communication with the public or communication with the people who get the solution. So what we should do is, so there is very low level of trust in between professionals and, let's say, public management. Yeah, between public management and people, between people and professionals. So what we're trying to do first is kind of increase this level of trust. Yes, so, but it's not mean that you cannot start this process of raising this level from the position you should do this, this, and this. Yeah, because I mean all world do it like that or whatever. So you start with some small things, and then you are trying to make the field of your trust, yeah, bigger, and try to solve more and more difficult questions. But it's a process of involvement into this trust. And so in this case, we are very careful that, okay, so if this is the problem which they want to solve, we want to be part of the solution. Yeah, let's see how we can solve this problem, and then solving it, we can add some more problems to this which they are solving, and then the effect will be a bit bigger. You know how it works, yeah, and so on. But you not come into the position that okay, you should do. So it's not kind of the no. Very often, professionals themselves behave very top down. Yeah. For me, surprisingly, so they talk so much about bottom up in a very top down way. Yeah, so I think this is sometimes a problem.
Who's next?
Gaspar Habjanic from Lionscapes from Berlin. I have a question for all three participants of the discussion, maybe. Strelka seems to be like a unique, let's say, unique form of organization in the sense of planning of public space or also buildings, something we do not see everywhere in the world or in all of the countries. Is it something specific to Russia, or is it possible to do it also in other countries, or would it be needed? Is it needed to have an organization like that also in the Netherlands or somewhere else? What do you think?
I don't know. For me, it is typical. The way we work together is typical for Russia, because we couldn't work in Russia on our own. We couldn't do it without Strelka, I think, because there's such a big difference in culture. But I could imagine that there are different Strelkas all over the world. I could imagine that, like in India, or in even maybe in Holland, but then on a different level. In fact, it is a bridge between the professional persons and the politics, and a bridge could work, I think, and sometimes it's needed.
Yeah, I think it's super relevant, especially because as a profession we are quite reactive. We react to kind of political decisions. We react to briefs from competitions or from tasks. But we seldom kind of generate briefs ourselves, and we generate kind of agendas ourselves. And this is what Strelka does quite well. They see an opportunity and they convince politicians, they convince kind of the cities that they need to go for that. And that's, we don't do that. And I think that's a really big missed opportunity.
My name is Ando Yu. I'm landscape architect from Hamburg, and I traveled through Russia 2 years ago from Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia to Moscow, and I experienced strong differences in social life and, of course, the economy. So I wonder, how does the money come from to invite international architects and to realize projects in so many, so different cities. Sorry, I experience that Moscow is the core of Russia, and there's a lot of economy going on there, but the rest is much more lower. So that's my question.
No, so one thing is that I mentioned before that when we work on the regional level, we much more work with the local architects than international architects. And then it's not mean that we are not working, I think, with the international architects in a very classical way of giving them the contracts for documentation. So sometimes it's a consultations of the local team. Sometimes they just share their vision through the workshops which they have. Sometimes, no, it's very different. Sometimes they do very preliminary concept and then it's developed by the local teams and supervised by these international architects. So it's not always, honestly, a big question of budgets and money. It's a question of the will, to realize projects. And I mean, we don't need, honestly, also when we start these projects, these or other projects, we start first working with the architects or landscape architects or consultancies. We get, okay, this is the scope of work which we should produce, and this is the money or the budget for which we need for that. And we understand it doesn't work first because nobody needs the scope of work. In reality, I mean, it will be used in 20%. Okay, so can we focus on those percents which matter, then to produce these whole packages? And I see so many projects in Russia within the whole rooms like that was fulfilled with the documentation, but the process was a disaster. And sometimes it's not. There is no need for that. I mean, we always know. When we as architects or landscape architects sometimes think about how we make money, we think about the amount of paper which we produce. And in this case, I mean, to make really in a small city of, I don't know, Palech, who is 10,000 people, which is a small, for Russian, like a small city, to go there, to talk with the people and just on the place, help them to update their public space, it's much more, it's not need, let's say, this amount of investment or international, let's say, this amount of investment,
Yes, hello, my name is Torbjörn Anders and I'm a landscape architect in Sweden. I think we are all really struck by the progress that you have been made through Strelka, and I share what my Dutch friend said over there. why don't we have more Strelkas all over the world? Why did this appear in Russia? You know, that was one of the least countries I could come to think of. So I think we all now try to figure out the strategies behind your institute and how you do it, and what is specifically Russian and what could be used by other countries. So I have one of the questions that I have, which is quite simple, is how do you relate to the school of Strelka? Is the school of Strelka important for your being? Is that the trick of the game, so to say, that you have the research and the academic credibility behind you? Would that be one of your success factors, so to speak?
No, I think Varvara should also be part of the answer, or at least if I will tell something wrong, you can just correct me. So first about this, that we may be the last place in the world where you can imagine such institutions to raise. No, in any professional in Russia, at least there is an idea of this, let's say, big impact which constructivism of Hutemas did to the world of architecture. And then on one hand, there is a lot of people who are trying to be part of that tradition, yeah. So, but so for us, I think it was very interesting. Can we raise something as strong as that process which held in this early 20th century, but in another way, yeah. So, I think this is the story that we have a tradition of some schools which were really influential within the architecture. Second thing is that, of course, this is the ecosystem. I can be in charge of only of KB. So for me, it was a passion that I went to the school when it was the first year, yeah, and it was completely out of all agenda within country or within the Moscow city. There was this previous mayor who, so it was an island of complete, let's say, no, it's not only about the freedom, it's island of some sense in, meaning in the field of where is no meanings at all, yeah, about the city. And when I went to the school, and then after that, for me, I thought it would be a good idea if this institution will be more work as an ecosystem, and then it can have also this branch which is much more on operational, practical level, but which works in the interest of the institution. So when I talk about this public benefit corporation, for me and for the people with whom I work, it's essential and very important that we are commercial company, because when you are commercial, not NGO, you have very specific laws of acting. Yeah, you should not be relaxed. You don't have time to. You always have to develop new products. You have to be much more proactive, and then you have to create. We're finishing. And then, so this, it's not bad to be a commercial entity, let's say, yeah? But then what you do with the profit, this is the question. And then for us, it was the answer that, okay, so we can support the institution. From the beginning, when we just started, it was very few amounts of money. Now we are fully covering the expenses of the institution. And for us and the FON Institute, yes, we don't influence on the education. Varvara can prove that. So we are not telling them, okay, study that or that or that, no. So they are totally independent in the way how they behave, but we are the part of one ecosystem, of course. And then there are some students. I mean, we got, so each year institutes attract around from 700 students. We select 30. They are 50% are international, then 30% are from regions of Russia, 20 from Moscow, and then they get tuition. So it's free education. They get a tuition to stay in Moscow for this research process, and then we repeating this already 10 years. Yeah, beside these public programs and so on. And for us, it's very important that that we, on one hand, work within the cities on a very practical level. On the other hand, having such institution and giving this opportunity for enlightenment and education. So it's, I don't think that one can exist without another one. So it's kind of right and left hand of one body.
Thank you. There is one last question at the very back, please, and then stand up and tell me.
Yeah, I will wake up. Hello, my name is Tatiana. Probably I'm different from you guys because I'm Russian. But as a landscape architect, I was formed in Europe. So I worked in Italy and now I'm working in Hamburg. My question is about actually what is happening after competition. Because in 2014, we won 2 competitions with Italian office. Let's start from positive point of view. One of them we proceeded to develop together with Sberbank. And but one, probably you know it very well, probably you made a brief for this, it's Hodinka Park. Unfortunately, for different reasons.
Unfortunately, it's not our project. Unfortunately, it's not our project.
It's not a project, okay. So another local...
What I can say you that also when we start all these processes, it's not only that Strelka is the only actor today within the Russian field. Mm-hmm. We have, I think, at least 10 offices who are organizing competitions, and they do in a similar way like we start them, and for us it's okay. Yeah, so we see that, no. So for us, no, for us it's very good that we see that the people start using the way how we work, yeah, and organize their own offices. So, like you mentioned, this project, I don't remember the name of the team which is running it. So, but there not only all competitions were held specifically in Moscow are Strelka based today, yeah, and we are very happy for that. And of course, not the competitions which held, they are all built. And I told you that we have the ratio in between built projects within our competition, 70%, which is very high. Also for the global offices. If you can see how many competitions running in the world and how many of them are realized finally, I mean, normally it's even lower. So we have 70% of us. Of course, we have 30% of not realized projects.
Yes. To finish, my question was also, do international architects, they are allowed, let's say, to follow the construction phase in case they're winning competition in Moscow?
Very short. Yeah. I mean, it's very different than in a lot of other countries, but if you, for example, we did a square in Moscow and we followed quite thoroughly the execution process, but you have to accept that it's not going to be like Italy or Switzerland, or so you follow the process, but then you adapt according to what changes during the construction, and you react to that. So it's how it works.
Yeah, no, one is fine. Okay. Yeah, I have to hurry up a little bit. Thank you very much for the deep insight into Strelka work. We will.